All right, so without further ado, the part you all came here for, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. So Leisha Sterling is the Executive Director of Geeks Without Borders, where she helps people turn their ideas for humanitarian technology into sustainable projects. Leisha has been in tech for over 20 years and has worn an impossible variety of hats during that tenure, including Senior Web App Engineer, Director of Technology, and this is the best one, Education Hacker. She's a lifelong proponent of software freedom at Geeks Without Borders. She works with projects that improve public water service in Tanzania, environmental tracking in Guatemala, and protecting indigenous lands in Ecuador and the US. Very important work that I think we need to see a lot more progress on. Leisha is fantastic. I'm so excited to invite her to the stage. Please give a warm round of applause for Leisha Sterling.
I never, ever get nervous before public speaking. Somehow I've been outrageously nervous about this one, and I've rewritten my talk a million times, like you have no idea, a million times. So I'm going to be talking about the cost of freedom. My name is Leisha Sterling, and if you want to find me anywhere, I am Leisha Vita pretty much everywhere. I've never met another Leisha Vita anywhere, so if you find a Leisha Vita, the chances are good it's probably me. Before I get started with the actual talk part of this, I would like to point out that I will be using the word Libre a lot. I use the word Libre because when you say free, people are like, what do you mean by free? And Libre is the kind of free that I mean. I'm not talking about free as in beer. I'm talking about freedom of speech, freedom of action. Hopefully that will be pretty obvious in my talk, but just to clarify, the word Libre just makes it nice. I think that we should just declare this word a borrowed word. It's English now. Thank you. All right. Yes, I will admit, this is a bit clickbaity. When you heard the title, The Cost of Freedom, what was the first thought that came into your mind? Did you think about soldiers? Did you imagine war? The United States? Whoa, hey, you're supposed to slide, not slide. Okay. In the United States, we often equate soldier sacrifices with the cost of our freedom. We count our blessings against the dead and permanently disabled. But what if I told you that the biggest protectors of your freedoms are not soldiers, but civilians? And what if I told you that the largest battles for your rights have been won by the people through nonviolent means? And what if I told you that I cannot scroll through my notes while also looking at a slide? No! It did it again! All right. I'll just hold my finger on this thing, shall I? Sorry, guys. Your liberties are not, for the most part, protected by guns, but by laws, customs, and norms. Even what you think of when I say freedom is based on cultural context, which comes from the totality of person-to-person interactions within a given community, state, region, or other subgroup of humanity. So let's get specific. What do I mean by freedom? The Oxford English Dictionary has 3 basic definitions that are relevant to this talk. The power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. The absence of subjugation to foreign domination or despotic government, and the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. And before we move on, let us take a moment to recognize a certain tendency to treat freedom, especially in the first definition above, as a zero-sum game. If I use my freedom to act in a way that harms another, then one person has freedom at the expense of the other. Laws are often written to either codify which freedoms have priority over other freedoms, or which people's freedoms have the priority over other people's. This is how we get a state were the rights of individuals to strike against an employer. Literally, the freedom to not do work may be overruled by the rights of a corporation to make profit at the expense of employees. If that seems like a strange example, I invite you to go look up what happened in this very town in 1919. I just want to say that it's been 100 years, and we've made a lot of progress, but we have a lot more to go in terms of our freedoms. So what does that have to do with GNU or Linux? A lot. Because the weekend, the 8-hour workday, minimum wage, OSHA regulations, and so many more of the good things you enjoy today were brought to you through a combination of direct action and legal action. The direct action took the form of strikes and protest marches, sure, but it also took the form of mutual aid networks of strangers in far-off towns who fostered the children of strikers so that they didn't have to worry about what those kids would eat while they weren't getting a wage. Of teams of people who de-evicted their neighbors when the sheriffs came to take all their belongings out of their houses. In rural areas, direct action looked like granges and cooperative grain distributors. In the cities, direct action includes cooperative grocery stores, cooperative bookstores, even cooperative manufacturing, some of which continues to this day. The legal action took the form of laws passed through state legislatures and Congress at the federal level, and it took the form of thousands of court cases, some big and some very small. Many battles were lost, and the struggle most definitely continues today. But look at how far we've come. So sure, you say to yourself, sweatshops are bad, and 6-year-olds with black lung is a horror we don't see anymore, but really, what are the horrors we need to worry about in software? Guys, do you remember June 2013? There was like some whistleblower guy who wanted to make sure that the world knew how everything they did was being surveilled and how all of our technology is being used to track and categorize us. What was that guy's name again? Oh yeah, Snowden. By now, 6 years later, if you have not paid attention to all the ways that governments and corporations are using technology against you, whether you purchase it or use it for free, then this short talk is unlikely to convince you that any of these things are important. Still, I kind of have to try. Google has gotten into a lot of trouble for misusing medical data before. What do you think is going to happen now that they own Fitbit? Or what about Project Nightingale? Have you heard about that? It's a partnership between Google and the Catholic medical system Ascension. They're taking all of the medical data so that they can do some experiments to see if they can help doctors figure out what people have faster. It sounds great, but we don't really know what's going to happen with all that medical data. And what about Facebook? I know, everybody loves to rag on Facebook, but it's not just the data that we choose to give them. What about all the stuff that they pick up on the sly? From your WebMD searches to your phone location history? Or how about the thousands of other companies and organizations that you touch each day? What is your bank's mobile app doing between the times that you check your balance or deposit a check? How much information about you did Equifax leak? And how much of it did you not even know that they had? And have you been profiled by a so-called artificial intelligence for law enforcement today? You're in Seattle. The answer is yes. How much do you trust the voting machine in your local precinct? And how about the rest of the machines in the United States of America? Are you feeling lucky? You cannot trust the software if you cannot know the code behind it. And you cannot make the software do what you want if you are not allowed to change it. It's that simple. Can you imagine what we could do if we had the source code to the whole universe? But we don't. And so we have experimental science to figure out how stuff works. Can you imagine how different computer security research would be if we actually had access to all of the source code and the things that we run on our devices? And I hate to break this to you, but trust is not our only problem. We have a problem of too much power in the hands of too few people. If you need to run a piece of software on the internet that will be used by millions of people, you need a giant data center. You need the cloud. Where are you going to find that cloud? I mean, is there anyone here who refuses to shop on Amazon because you hate Amazon's labor policies in their distribution centers and the customer service centers, or because they unfairly outcompete a range of small and medium local businesses around the country and around the world? So I have to ask you, do you use Signal? I do. If you do, like I do, we are indirect customers of Amazon. Yes. And what other services do you use that are running on AWS? Or some other Amazon service? What are you using that runs on Google's cloud or IBM's cloud? How many more choices are there? Not a whole lot. The choices that are out there besides the big three are really small in comparison, and if you're starting a new startup and you have in your imagination all the millions of people that are going to come to use your tool on the first month after launch because you are that great, you are not going to use the small guy, even if he happens to be cheaper, because you're going to be afraid you're going to fall over. So wait, let's back up. Let's get smaller. What kind of telephone do you have? How much control do you have over that phone? Can you legally fix it yourself? I mean, I know that you can probably take it apart and fix it yourself, but can you do that legally? Can you legally jailbreak it? Can you change the operating system if you discover that there's a bug that the company hasn't made a priority? How much did that phone cost you anyway? Did obtaining the phone lock you into a long-term contract with a phone company? Is the phone even actually yours? Remember, if you own it, you own it. Why is it so hard to get a totally free and open source phone? Remember when there was this promise that Google's Android was going to be this wonderful open source alternative? What even happens to that? The answer is that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And between the power that Google has over all those phones and the power that chip makers and other hardware developers have by keeping some secret sauce that they won't share with anyone, we just don't get to have the freedom on our phones. But why? Why do they need to have a secret sauce at all? It's just like some medieval blacksmiths who pretended that the work they did had some magic behind it that only special people can learn and wield. They could sell their wares with the promise of something ineffable while hiding the flaws in their work. But these technology secrets are so much worse than those medieval ones because they don't put more money into the pockets of the people working in the factories to build the phones. It just puts more money and more power into the already well-endowed bank accounts of the wealthy. And this brings us right back to the fight for fair wages and humane work environments. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have humane work environments for everyone? Wouldn't it be nice if we had less income inequality and more justice? Wouldn't it be great if we could build our own phones from parts and install a Libre operating system and applications that had been peer-reviewed on open fora? Wouldn't it be great if The next time you got together with some friends who were planning a protest against a coal terminal or a political campaign for a city supervisor, instead of opening a shared Google Doc to brainstorm and a shared Google Sheet to manage your finances and your project tasks, you all agreed to do the same work in a free and open source tool like Collabora, running inside of a cloud data center that was managed by a cooperative that you trust. Or even better, what if it were running in a distributed manner that negated the need for a massive data center entirely? So what is stopping you from doing just that? What is the real cost? This is where I get a lump in my throat and a deep sense of frustration, because the cost is high. Sometimes it feels like it's too high. We have a massive amount of direct action ahead of us, and sometimes that action will cost us personally. Werner Koch, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, is a hero. He was the original author of GNU-PEG, and he kept it at it and GPG4 Wind updated for years, while making only about $25,000 a year. How much more would he have made if he were working on an enclosed software project? And how much poorer would all of us be if he'd been doing that instead of working on open source? The cost of my free and open source fantasy future is not counted in dead soldiers, but in hours of labor and dollars for infrastructure. There are the hours spent by programmers to build the software, and the hours spent by DevOps wizards to get the system up and running and keep it going all day, every day. And then there are the hours of the users who will bang their heads in frustration as the programmers and the DevOps wizards keep iterating through improvements until they get something that works, as well as the enclosed software that has been holding our lives hostage. We will need to build more companies that cannot grow into new monopolies, but rather have community values at their core. There is more legal work to be done to make sure that those companies are protected, even though they don't amass the kinds of wealth and power that Alphabet has today. But look how far we've come. Do you remember when people said that Linux would never be useful on the desktop? I remember. I was a big fan of Simian No in 2001. I mean, like, still, I wish I could go back to Simian No because I really, really loved it. As they did a great job of proving that Linux could be the perfect daily driver operating system for ordinary families. My kid preferred KDE though, and eventually he got me to make the switch for a while. Yeah, installing software back then was a total pain. It was likely to fail, as it was to succeed, and lots of us kept at it. Even those people who weren't programming the systems or the applications that ran on top of them were contributing to the development of the Linux desktop environment just by using it, hard-headedly continuing to bang at the problem and figure out why things weren't working, send in bug reports, rinse, repeat, until things finally worked. How about this? Do any of you remember when audio and video editing software on Linux was terrible? And now, the Libre software, Audacity, is one of the most popular audio editing tools for podcasters, no matter what operating system they use. Holy moly, what about Blender? Have you seen what Blender can do? Blender's really cool. I wrote this talk in LibreOffice Writer. These slides are created in LibreOffice Impress. I kind of cheated because I stole a template from Google, but I guess technically the template is also Libre. I used Firefox to hunt for pictures and quotes and citations on the web. None of these things required a degree in computer science, which is good because I don't have one of those. In fact, even my mom, a person who is unbelievably technophobic, can use Firefox and LibreOffice to do everything on Linux that she used to do on Windows. And that's not all. Entire countries have declared that the software that they use in government systems must be Libre software. In other places, state and regional governments have passed laws either requiring Libre software outright or else open document standards for all government work. There are companies already working on fully open and Libre laptops and telephones, and there are companies that exist to support the development of more open hardware projects so that we can build even more free software without any blobs of secret sauce spoiling the recipe. We have come so far, but we have so much more to travel before that we can say that we truly have freedom. I already talked the part for that slide. So what can you do? Learn to code. Not because you want a job, but because you want to build your own damn homepage and serve it off a spare laptop in your living room and start blogging instead of posting to Facebook 100 times a day. Or maybe because you want to find the bug that made you lose that essay you wrote for class last week and fix the thing now instead of waiting for someone else to do it. Learn to code because you figured out that Nextcloud is super cool, but setting up a private replacement for Google Apps is going to take a lot of work if you don't automate the upgrades and the server maintenance tasks for yourself. Learn to code so that you can read other people's code, even if you never write a line yourself. Learn to code because the skills that you need to write an essay can be applied to both Learn to code because the skills that you need to write an essay can be applied to writing code, and you'll be better at both after documenting your learning process to help yourself and others. Use free software whenever possible. Get good with it. Don't be a jerk about it, though. Teach others. Also, get a law degree. I mean, you don't have to do all of these things, but I'm sure somebody here would be awesome at law. And when you get that law degree, fight for the user. Fight for the worker. Fight for the coder and the security researcher. Fight for freedom and justice, and be a go-around hero. If you are lucky enough to have money, give money to projects and companies that value what you value. Pay for the bug you want fixed. Pay for tech support from the developer or the company that pays that developer. Life is about more than money, but money is necessary to live in our society. So make sure that the people who build or maintain the software that you are dependent on aren't living in poverty. Hack all your things. Don't break other people's stuff because that's just mean. But use your freedom to the fullest and see what it can do for you. If you own it, pwn it. Pwn the ever-living stuffing out of it. And then fix it. Because you have that right. Or you should. And civil disobedience is direct action, and it is so very good for your soul. Thank you for listening.